Hello, and welcome to the mentorDINO YouTube channel. I'm your host, Caitlin Rossier. I am an architect and founder of mentorDINO. Each week, I interview amazing professionals in and around the architecture, engineering, and construction industry to help foster learning, growth, and inspiration in others. Thank you all to our current subscribers, and if you're new, we'd love to have you join our community. So hit subscribe. It really does help others be able to discover this resource. So let's dive in. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Welcome to the mentorDINO podcast. I would like to welcome Tara Pakler, Specification Sales at LaFace McGovern Associates in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much, Tara, for taking the time to speak with me today.
Thanks for having me, Caitlin.
So I always start out with kind of the bigger introduction question to kind of give everybody a sense of your background and how you got to where you are today working at LaFace. Do you mind kind of going through your education background and kind of your journey so far in your career?
Sure, definitely. Well, like many design professionals out there, the path I started on is not the path I am currently on, but it has lots of ties in to where I started. So I got my undergraduate at the University of Pittsburgh. I then went on to do my master's work at Chatham University here in Pittsburgh. And I left Chatham with a Master of Arts in interior architecture through their interior architecture program. And I went out into the world, expecting to do what I had set out to do, which was practice commercial design within, an architectural firm. And I started onto that path, worked locally for both large and small firms in the Pittsburgh market, started to gain, some experience within that piece of the architectural community. And then I was derailed unexpectedly. So a dear friend of mine owned a lighting showroom, and she just needed some help, a few hours a week. Hey, can you jump in? You're qualified to do this. And I thought, this is great. I'll learn a little bit about lighting and stay on my path. Well, I fell in love with lighting. And so that began my trek into the lighting niche of architectural design, and I really haven't looked back since then. And so the very interesting part about that experience was it was a traditional lighting showroom, which doesn't exist as much in today's current era. The showroom model has started to die. It's a bit of a dinosaur. No pun intended to our podcast here.
Yeah. Hey, I have fun. If I can roll him into anything, I do.
That's right. That's right. But the great part about it was the group that I was working with, most of our business was centered around historic restoration and repair work. So basically going into, some of those vintage properties around the city, finding the original gas or electric lighting fixtures that existed within those spaces, completely rehabbing those back and electrifying them. So that they could be rehung in their original environments. That was where I really started to understand and fine tune the love of materials and, the engineering behind a light, what makes a light, following the journey from, what were we using as a population whenever we were dealing with, fire, gas lighting, and how that's evolved into the electric era. And of course, now into the LED era. And so that's where my love of lighting really started to take root. I was given an opportunity to join LaFace and McGovern about 6 years ago, and it really was the right fit at the right time. I never really saw myself on the rep side of the industry. That it just didn't fit into what I thought my story was. But I really, really love the idea of being able to work hands-on with, the architects, interior designers, electrical engineers, lighting designers of our area, to start to bring projects to life. And so I took the leap into the rep side of our business and have been doing that for the last 6 years happily.
How long were you working part-time at your friend's business before
So
jumping in?
absolutely. Not very long, actually. It coincided beautifully with the financial crash of
Ah.
2008, 2009. So I was holding on as an entry level human. My
Trying
salary
to
was lower,
stay
so
in.
I was staying aboard. Um, but I knew that, that was a pause that I had to take while our industry was trying to recover, and come up for air. And so I did. I made that switch over to full time with the lighting showroom whenever kind of the industry said I needed to.
Yeah.
And I figured it would be a quick stop, and I was actually with that business for about 8 years. So it was not a quick stop.
No. But you have to react too to what's going on around you. Like, you didn't control the economic crisis that was going on. So sometimes
Absolutely.
other forces force you to pivot into something you love.
Oh, for sure. And I think staying flexible, for lack of a better term, flowing with whatever is happening around you within the industry is kind of critical. I think when you start to put yourself into a box and say, this is how it's going to be, and this is how I'm going to progress, the world tends to have a way of knocking you right out of that quickly.
Yeah.
So being flexible is always a great thing, especially, when you're starting out and trying to find your legs.
Yeah. And then on that side, were you like, I'm just fascinated that you were looking at like historical lighting and how
Yes.
that switches out because there are so many old buildings in Pittsburgh and around the country. Was that company fabricating and like, I think more taking a light off the wall and fixing the guts to keep kind of the outside or either remaking the outside if it can't be reused again? Can you tell me a little bit more about that process?
Absolutely. And lighting restoration is still something that's done in, our country.
Hmm.
There's some pockets in Virginia that definitely have some fantastic, lighting restoration specialists that are still at it. It's just like any other historic preservation or restoration uh, industry where you take what you have, you figure out what the condition of that particular piece is in, and then you just start layer by layer trying to figure out what can be saved, what can be rebuilt, what needs to be replaced. We had an extensive network of uh, reproduction glass shades, for instance, because so many
Hmm.
times the brass bodies of those fixtures were in fantastic shape. And of course, with a little TLC and a lot of elbow grease on the wheel, you could
Some love.
really bring those back. But, they probably have lost a number or all of their glass shades along the way. And so it was
Hmm.
really just kind of figuring out what that particular piece needed. We would collaborate often with, specialists within the area. I know we had a, a very interesting project with the fixtures that are in the mayor's office. And of course,
Hmm.
those fixtures are full plaster horsehair pieces. And, we had started the restoration on those. One of them came down, and as soon as we started working on it, I mean, it just started crumbling. And so, we reached out to Carnegie Museum, brought in specialists. Before we knew it, we were learning how to inject plaster to shore up the structure, making casts, molding things, piecing back together, and they turned out fantastic in the end. But you really move on your feet when it comes to those type of pieces. Some of it's straightforward, you know exactly what you're going to get, and you always get a couple curveballs. But
Yeah.
um, but there is nothing like it when it comes to those historic properties. If you can find those original pieces, it just holds the whole character together, which is awesome.
Yeah, and you don't get that craft as much anymore.
You don't. You really don't. And I'm lucky at LaFace McGovern. I mean, the majority of our very many lighting lines, we represent about 130 different lighting lines. The majority of them actually are, American or North American made. And so I've had the opportunity to get into a lot of those lighting factories and really see what real-time manufacturing is these days on a modern fixture. And it's funny. There's a lot of similarities. It's not as far removed as you would think. The craftsmanship's a little different, but the principles are all there, which is cool.
And so on LaFace, you're more on the product rep side in terms of any architects listening. How is that role and job different than an architect or a designer, since you've kind of been on both sides?
I thought I understood what a rep did whenever I entered into this world, and I was given a different education in a hurry. I can't speak to any other group of product representatives. I've never had any experience in anything other than lighting, but lighting, especially on the specification side of things, is it's equal parts artistic and technical every single day. There's a lot of time spent interfacing and collaborating with our design community, trying to figure out what the solution is to whatever design is trying to come through and bubble to the surface. And then, of course, I get to stay with a project the whole way through. So it's all the way into, getting those calls to get down to the site. Installation is happening and we need to make an adjustment, on the fly in real time, or, there's a technical issue with color temperature, drivers, something of that nature that needs to be addressed. So yeah, I never know what's going to happen every day. I wake up, I have a plan, and then I see how
And you never
how
know.
it turns out.
Now, are you just working on local projects, or do you have a territory or region you stick to?
Yes. Yeah, and this is very within the lighting market. I'm sure this translates into other products also. The country is broken into territories, and so then we can be your local representative for whatever that lighting factory is within the territory. Kind of boots on the ground for them. So if a product is being produced, say in California, um, it's much easier to have somebody right here in Western Pennsylvania for us to be able to, get into your offices, meet to review things, talk through things, troubleshoot, whatever is needed. Our territory is Western Pennsylvania, and then LaFace also covers all of West Virginia. We have a West Virginia based office. So we tend to throw a lot of projects back and forth with our West Virginia team. It may start in design up here and then, is being built down there, vice versa. So we stay for Pittsburgh, we tend to stay very local. Most of the things that we're working on are more within our region. But we do tend to catch a lot of work that's being designed out of town. So we definitely do have to interface with, architects, electrical engineers, lighting designers that are outside of the Western Pennsylvania market.
And what type of projects have you worked on?
Oh my gosh, name it, Caitlin. That's one of the fun parts about what I get to do is it's everything. It can be, and I've had the opportunity to work on anything from, healthcare related projects, K through 12 work, university work, all kinds of corporate office fit outs and commercial projects of that nature, hospitality, high end residential, multifamily. Oh gosh, the list goes on and on. It's really whatever, music venues. It's there's always so much happening, and that's the fun part of what we get to do is we get to touch all these different kinds of projects, which is where I feel I become the biggest asset to my design community, is because lighting is so specific depending on what the type of project is. There's going to be different codes, different rules, different needs for a lighting fixture that's going into a behavioral health space as opposed to an airport. And so, knowing how to navigate those and what might be coming really is kind of the asset. I always love that whenever I get into a project, and especially with an architect or a designer that's just starting out, being able to start to have those conversations of, have you thought about a fire rated housing in this application? Go ask that question. Like,
Yeah.
what kind of codes do we actually need to abide by here? It's great. It's that education in real time, and I can be that kind of conduit to help just make the specifiers around me just smarter. You guys have to touch so many pieces of the puzzle that you have to have those people that are specialized in those industries to be able to fall back on and have those conversations with. And because you've got too many things, too many balls in the air.
Yeah. And I always tell young professionals that you'll never know everything, but it's finding the team that, regardless if they're a formal consultant or your local reps that just are seeing the same details, design, products every day, that you're the master of it. So it's leverage that knowledge and that connection. And if you don't understand something and need to see it in person, then ask. Like, so many times you guys have samples that you can just bring in, take a look at. For lights, really seeing how it washes a wall or seeing the fixture in person can be helpful when making decisions.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And I think lighting is one of those interesting pieces. There are going to be times, if you're a young architect in a firm, there's going to be, of course, times where you're lucky to have a lighting designer on board, right? Either within your office itself or, just as a consultant that's coming in on the project. And in those instances, I would suggest just beat their ears. Like, just try to figure out, why are they doing things? Why are these decisions being made? What's the process that they're using to get to these final decisions? If that luxury isn't there on a project and you don't have one of those professionals in the room, a real, an LD really helping you out along the way, ask your reps, have those conversations. It doesn't happen very often, but I absolutely love it when a young architect comes to me and is like, hey, can we schedule some time and just talk about downlights? Or can you, come in and just show me how to go through a lighting submittal package? Those things I get so excited about, because typically, as humans, we tend to shy away from those things that might show that we don't know. And so we just don't ask. But from where I sit, I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. Ask me, let's do it. And it's just, you get to share that knowledge. You get to empower somebody to have a bit more of an understanding on whatever the piece of the puzzle is that they need to know at that point.
And I know probably the first 6 years of my career, I never had a lighting designer on my projects. It was all, you just had an electrical engineer. And then they're like, okay, architect, you go pick the specialty fixtures or other things, and they have the corridors and they can get that done. And you're like, crap, I'm not electrical. Like, what's going on? What type of temperature do I need to make sure it's consistent? How's the housing associated with it, depending on what the ceiling's doing or whatever the options. I definitely leverage my current lighting designer teams that I work with because they're just so knowledgeable. But I understand that so many firms don't have that luxury, depending on if they have it in-house, if they don't get a consultant, or if the budget's just tight on a project and they can't afford it. So I know we've definitely done mock-ups on our own and trying to figure it out as not a lighting designer side. It's hard.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you find is the biggest challenge being a lighting rep?
There are far more hats than I expected to wear as a lighting rep. I, of course, because of my title, I, of course, expected that my time would be, spent interfacing with my people, so to speak, the, interior designers, landscape architects, the creative minds of our community. And so I was surprised, and of course, this has just continued as I've matured in our industry. I was surprised at all the different people and parts of a project that I need to interface with on the daily. So, for me, that then pulls from the traditional design team, of course, over to the electrical engineer. That's a big part of who we're working with, obviously, on the day to day. But then beyond that, it's the electrical contractors, the general contractors, the electrical distributors, because with lighting, our projects are being purchased by the electrical contractor. And so those contractors are purchasing through an electrical distributor, not through, my company.
Mm-hmm.
And so understanding who those people are interfacing with them on the daily, facilities, uh, personnel, oh gosh, developers, the list goes on and on. There's a lot of different, personalities that we get to interface with, and understanding who they are, where they fit, who needs to collaborate. A lot of my position I have found is just bringing people together, to talk through things. Hey, let's all get on a call together, and actually meet each other and talk through what needs to happen in the next steps. So, I kind of act as that conduit a lot of times of just kind of connecting these different parties and bringing them in together, because let's face it, whenever everybody's collaborating together, it all feels better. It all goes better.
Yeah. And just making sure everybody's on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And understands, where things sit in the timelines and, within project needs. So,
yeah. And you mentioned exterior and interior lighting. So besides the difference of being outside versus inside, are there different strategies that you typically educate when trying to light something from an exterior perspective versus interior?
sure. That falls into the same bucket. Like I was saying before, what are the rules of the road, so to speak, if we were doing, an elementary school versus a hospital, like a swanky hotel lobby? I mean, there's different rules of the road,
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to exterior fixtures, the first thing you think about, of course, is performance. Is that thing engineered and built to withstand, the elements it's going to be within? If we're doing a project right here in Pittsburgh, we have a pretty brutal exterior for our fixtures to live in. There's a lot of expansion and contraction. There's a lot of salt. There's a lot of things that you want to keep in account. Salt for roads. Now, marine life, that's a whole different thing. What color temperature do you need for a coastal area where there's turtles that you have to think about, right? You need a
Mm-hmm.
warmer color temperature so that um, you're not getting in
Hurting
the
the
way.
turtles the
Right.
wrong
You're
way.
not getting exactly. So those little baby turtles, when they hatch, are actually going to fall in the moon into the sea instead of the 3000 K color temperature up here. so there's rules like that apply, of course. I like to think of exterior lighting. Well, it depends on the situation, right? Exterior lighting, it's either more of a safety thing. Do
Mm-hmm.
we have the appropriate foot candles in the appropriate places to make sure that the people that are moving through the space are safe and secure? But then whenever you get into those situations where you're more in a residential hospitality restaurant type situation, that's more poetic lighting. That is
Mm-hmm.
more trying to understand, how do you make this place feel like a place you want to linger in? And in those situations, for me, exterior lighting is lighting you cannot see. It is all those hidden fixtures that are just accentuating architecture and just giving hints about
Mm-hmm.
what's happening around you. There's something about the subtlety of it that is nice, because when you're outside, you don't need the lumen output that you would need inside of a building, because you're usually in a darker environment, and so your eye doesn't need quite as much to be comfortable.
Here's a weird question. when you're in a restaurant and they haven't programmed the lights properly when they transition from like day dining to that like evening dining light, and they don't have it controlled right, how do you get pissed off when it's not done right? And it's just like, not to say that my husband used to work at Lutron and it drives him nuts every time that they don't have the controls set
Okay,
up
it
right.
really
That is
drives
where
him.
that's where the
It
context
really does.
comes in.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, yes. We look at
If
the
I see
ceilings
strobe
a
lights
lot.
and stuff right in the middle of where a feature wall would be, I'm like, why did you put that there? That's
Why?
where.
Why is
And
this
so it's like,
happening?
I get my own little things. I get excited when the bathroom's very well done at a restaurant, and I go tell other
Yeah.
people to go check out the bathroom. He gets really annoyed when the lighting controls don't operate right, or there's different color temperatures in the different
Mm-hmm.
like bulbs if they didn't change them out properly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
We're getting further and further away from that in our LED world, but it is still something that gets to irk humans like me. Yes, the answer is yes. It absolutely is
all the lighting
noticeable
pet
and
peeves.
frustrating. Um, it is funny though, because locally around town, like if something happens like that, I literally get home and just start like going through, our database. I'm like, is this ours? Did we do this? And then of course,
Is this our mess
if
up? What's going on?
right, is this our stuff? And of course, my thought is, if it's our stuff, we could fix it. Like, so
Yeah.
because LaFace we have an entire controls department within our purview, and I would recommend to any young professionals out there, if you're working with a lighting consultant, um, a lighting rep group who takes controls seriously and has the infrastructure to support the controls on a project is a partner you want to have. That is such a huge part. I mean, as your husband knows, I mean, that's such a huge part of the puzzle, the electrical puzzle, in today's world. And that's not going anywhere. That is just going to keep ramping up into the future. And so we actually keep, we have three um, master electricians on staff that only do commissioning work for our control systems. So when a project is completely installed, ready to go, um, you know, they're deployed to make sure all the programming is set, all the light levels are where they need to be. If there's color changing or scenes involved, that is all set for, ownership to be able to live and work in their space. That becomes very vital also now that we're getting into like color tuning, and working with, shifting of color temperature throughout the day. But having somebody locally for us is huge in those situations, because it's like you said, like if I'm out in the world and I see a problem, like I'm like, hey, Mike,
Yeah.
listen, we're going to need to get you down to wherever because we need a tweak. And so having them right here locally is it's awesome, because we can just send them out, quickly to be able to make things right, that's it. It's the support the whole way through a project. It can't just be the support on the design end.
Yeah, and I find the controls are a lot like, as controls are to light fixtures, door hardware is to doors. So it can be very, very confusing to figure out how to specify it, how to make sure it's operated correctly. And it's all a bunch of numbers and letters, but the second it doesn't go right, you instantly know about it in the field. And then it's just like, ah. And lights can be so not customized, but there's so many different variations of it between direct, indirect. Everybody wants to be able to control the environment around them, especially when you get down to like office level. Or I've even, my most recent MRI is all color tuning. And so participants can come in and fix and create whatever color scene they want. And so making sure everything transitions and moves and does everything as it's supposed to, because when you click a button and it doesn't work, it's very obvious when it doesn't work.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And there's so many reasons why that could be not working properly.
Exactly.
We know the big ones. We can get to the big ones really quick, but yeah, sometimes it's a puzzle and we need to stay with it.
Yeah.
to make sure we've got it.
Do you have any advice for architects or engineers that aren't specialists in lighting, but maybe have found they really enjoy lighting and want to go into being either a specialist in lighting or a rep or just focusing their design focus on it for projects?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would, you know what, if with whether it's lighting or any other piece of the architectural puzzle, if you're drawn to something, if something interests you and you just kind of get that energy from that particular piece of the architectural equation, go into like explore it, right? Explore it. I think that so many times I'll derail here. Hold on. Let me go back to your question. Yes, if people are interested in getting into lighting, of course, talk to your local reps. If you have local lighting designers, I mean, in Pittsburgh, we are like lacking in lighting design. It's a territory within our country that I don't think really understands the real value of, you know, a lighting designer. Of course, there's other markets that it's just, of course, that's someone on your team. Why would you not have one of these people with you? But you know, seek them out and talk to them. Start to understand, you know, what projects they're working on and why they do what they do and how they got where they are. I know I've met lighting designers that come from all sorts of backgrounds, you know, not just, you know, through the Penn State AE program, which is an awesome way to become a lighting designer, by the way. But, you know, I know many interior designers that have, you know, gone deeper into that side of things. And so talk to the people around you, talk to your local reps, you know, start to pick their brains about what's available out there. And really, lighting is one of those things, like you said, Caitlin, if that's a focus of yours and that's something that you are willing to fine tune your understanding and education in, you will quickly become a specialist in that for your firm, especially if your firm doesn't have lighting designers on staff. You know, that's a way that you can really set yourself apart and, you know, add value to yourself as an individual is by rooting into that. But there's a yearly lighting trade show. It's called Leducation, LED-ication. Leducation happens once a year in March in New York City. And it is probably, if you are seriously interested in lighting, that's a couple day hit. That's 48 hours of your life that you can really just dive all in. There are more, you know, CEU AIA courses than you could sit through. And it is basically every manufacturer from, you know, from our country, North America, the European markets that are, you know, that have a presence here in the States. They're all there. It's, you can talk lighting with everybody around you for hours and hours on end. It's a great experience. So I would say, you know, if somebody's really serious, that would be a great place for them to go to make connections within the industry, to see what's out there, you know, to try to figure out what part of the lighting world they jive with best.
I know you said you tested out lighting and fell in love with it. Was there a particular piece or moment that you found like, oh, this is for me?
Oh, that's a hard one. You know, it's a running joke within our industry that once you get into lighting, you're not getting out. I thought it was this funny thing that was said locally, and then, you know, I realized that no, this is a very national and I'm sure international thing. If you talk to anybody who's in the industry and has stayed in the industry, we all have very different stories on how we got here, but the same thing holds true, which is once you enter into this world, it is likely going to be where you're going to stay. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what kind of draw it has. Maybe it is because it is equal parts technical and artistic. It
Yeah.
does allow you to kind of really move both pieces of your brain, and depending on which piece you like to move the most, you can dive right into that side of it.
Yeah, and focus on one thing versus another.
Right, right. But that's the running joke within our industry is like once you get in, that's it. It's over.
There's so much you can do within as an architect, interior designer, engineer to specialize. And I run into a lot of young professionals that are like, how did people specialize in something? How do they know what direction to take? And a lot of the times you just stumble upon it.
That's funny. When I was working on my master's, I remember, one of our professors who was a practicing architect had given that exact advice. They were like, find the niche that
Mm-hmm.
works for you. Keep your eyes open for it. Like you'll find it. It might be there. Don't keep yourself pigeonholed. And I remember sitting there in that classroom thinking, like, how the heck do you
Yeah.
even do that? Like, what does
What
that
are you
even
talking
mean?
about?
Right. Like, yes, I understand what you're saying, but how do you even find that to know what it is? It'll find you in an odd way. It's like I said before, you have to pay attention in your early years. You have to try on a lot of things. It's like young children, right? If you're a young parent, basically
Mm-hmm.
it's like you put your kids in all these different things, like try soccer, try gymnastics, try basketball, try basket weaving. I mean, like just try all these things, try them all on, see what fits. Um, and then they usually, gravitate into something. It's kind of the same with our industry. You keep yourself open, try all sorts of things within your firm. Um, you know, talk to all the different people that are doing all the different jobs in your firm, and you have to pay attention to what resonates. You pay attention to, I like to, at the end of the day, it's like you think about like what were those moments during the
Mm-hmm.
day that like gave you the energy? Like what were the things that you did during that day that like got you going? Um, and then you just try to do more of that kind of thing. Um, and you usually lead yourself
Yeah.
into a place you might not think you're going, but you're supposed to go there. So just keep following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah. And like we talked about initially, sometimes there's other forces that just happen. I
Yeah,
know COVID forced people to realize things about themselves. The recession shifted people around, and sometimes you find
absolutely.
your passion when something is a bigger force getting you to shift.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, as humans, we're kind of wired to just kind of like get into the shell when those type of things happen. You kind of prepare and lock in and just hold the line. And I think it's kind of the opposite. Hindsight through some of the major external shifts that have happened over the course of my career, it actually, you kind of have to look at it like, okay, things are about to shake up and I don't know how they're going to shake, but let's see where this spits us at the
Yeah.
end. You have to be willing to see the good stuff that's happening within that crazy time and know that you might move somewhere you didn't mean to, but probably going to be the best thing for you whenever hindsight finally kicks in.
Yeah. That's great advice. Even going like design and construction, and so much goes with the economy. And so you never know. People get very worried when people talk about recessions are coming, and then young professionals just starting their career like, oh my God, a recession's coming. And they think of 2008. I'm like, well, not all recessions are that extreme. But at the same time, if you're just living in fear of a
Yeah,
recession and being let go, it can definitely be hard. But instead, just saying, all right, things are going to shake up. What
that's it.
opportunities ahead of me and what's going to happen? I think really pick up people's morale, even if, change can be scary. Um,
Hmm.
but sometimes it leads to opportunities like you finding lighting and finding a whole
Yeah,
new path that you are having a blast. Every time I see you come into our
absolutely.
office, you are bubbling and super excited about everything. So you always
It's,
bring a cheer
that's
to my
because I get to work with you guys. It's fun. I'm a collaboration person, though, and so you got to know. It's like I said, you got to know what sparks you, right? I mean, there's definitely going to be those personalities where the idea of as much collaboration as I do on the daily is like
Too
asphyxiating,
much.
right?
Yeah.
It's like that sounds like my nightmare. So you have to know what feeds you and what you're cut for, and lean into it. But somebody had given me the advice more recently, which I thought was really cool, is when you get to those points, because we all do that, like we'll all hit those burnout points where we're just running really, really hard, and we lose steam, we lose the energy to keep doing whatever it is that we're doing. And so the advice was, you have to show up like it's your favorite thing in the world. You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of put that energy and that face into it. And it starts to turn it. It really does. If you're always looking for the parts that are wrong with your career or your firm or the people that you're working with, you're going to see it. You're going to see it and you're going to notice more and more of it. But if you're always looking for the things that are right, that do fuel you, the things people are doing that really are awesome, the things that your firm does that, really support you and give you that, safety net behind you as you're growing, you're going to see that. And you're going to see more and more of that. So it's a momentum shift.
Yeah.
You have to.
It's a mindset.
It is.
Yeah, when you're burnout, it can be very negative, and then you just start to spiral in just the negative
Yes.
thoughts all the time. And there is no perfect firm, perfect company, perfect project. It doesn't exist.
Nope. Don't try to find it.
Because you won't. And so every project will have its pros, cons, fun times, challenges. But
Yep.
definitely staying on the positive can help you at least get out of burnout if anybody is burned out right now.
Oh, for sure. I know that. Yeah, there's a few out there. I know it.
There's always,
because we all have to be in that place sometimes.
Yeah.
This is our industry moves quickly. It really does. It's not like we have an off season.
No, we're always on.
Always.
Yeah.
We're always creating something.
From an organization standpoint, has there been an organization that's left a really big impact on your journey, or an organization that's really impactful for lighting designers or lighting specialists?
Well, I would say lighting designer specifically, and me, of course, coming from where I come from, there is an organization called Wild Women in Lighting Design. And we don't have a Pittsburgh chapter here, but there are some very active, very wonderful chapters around the country. That is a fantastic organization to just meet like-minded people who are on those same career paths as you, if you're a lighting design professional. Of course, I like to work with AIA in the architectural world, IIDA and ASID in the interior design world, and then of course IES in the electrical engineering side of things. And it's just those different organizations are just great groups to pull the pods of people and support them.
And very diverse, because you've got a little bit of the architects, the interior designers, the engineers, and then you're more specialists too. I always find sometimes architects, interiors, and engineers kind of stay in their lanes with organizations. Yes. And I feel like we need to cross collaborate more.
Oh, totally. If there was like more of a cross pollination thing, that would be
and get the owners fantastic. In there and just get everybody together, because that's how we are on projects. So
yes,
need more of the bigger organizations to start collaborating with each other rather than having their own little siloed events.
Exactly. And I'm sure you agree, those projects where you've got a team that's willing to just like come together and throw things back and forth. I mean, those are the projects that really, they get off the ground, they stay off the ground.
Yeah. So, and it's always the people. Like, I know you talked about discovering lighting. I discovered my passion's always the people side, regardless if it's the users or my team. And that's kind of how I started mentorDINO, and just kind of discovering what I like about design and educating, mentoring. And it's like, okay, how can I do more of that and just hone in on it?
Exactly. That's it. Yep. Find the
Yeah.
things. Find the things that give you
Find the things.
energy and do more of it.
I always like wrapping up my podcast with this final question. And it's, what advice do you have for young professionals just starting their career?
Gosh, I feel like I gave some of this throughout the course of our chat. It's mindset. It really is. The energy you put out is the energy you're going to get back. I know that sounds like the way it sounds, but it's the truth. If you feel that you need to make a change somewhere in how the day to day feels, start with you. Like, start with how you're coming at it. That really does. That changes a lot. And also ask questions. Just ask questions. I know when people start with us in an organization and, we have a pretty intensive training program. Whenever, folks start on with LaFace McGovern, the big thing for me is, are those people continuing to just ask the questions? If somebody stops asking questions, that's like my red flag that something's going on. Are you okay? What's happening here? Yeah, just be curious, keep asking, and also don't feel intimidated to ask the questions that you might think you should know the answer to. Put yourself out there and, ask for the guidance when you need it. Find the people that are going to be your allies in those different spaces and lean on them. Have those conversations, ask them those questions. More likely than not, they're going to be happy that you want to have that conversation with them. They're not going to be judgmental. You not knowing XYZ.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know when I started, I was more scared to reach out to reps and be like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, I'm not going to know the information and they're just going to make fun of me that I
yes.
don't know. Or
Terrified.
just be like, well, you're just a kid and you just started out of school. What do you know? And it's just like,
Exactly. I was the same way. I was terrified that I wouldn't know enough to be able to have that conversation. And the exact opposite is true. You just go into it and say, I don't know about this. You got to
yeah.
start at the beginning. Start at the beginning with me.
And most of the time, especially if it's more of a rep, you've specialized in it. So you love
Yes.
the topic. So it can be very easy just to keep diving deeper and deeper and learning as much as you can.
And that's our job at the end of the day, is to be that resource for our local team.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to be doing with you guys.
Yeah. And I would say mindset is huge. I know you kind of skimmed over it, but I have seen a lot of people over the years that once they just start the negative talk,
Yes.
it spirals and it goes down that path. And
Yeah.
you can see it on team members, regardless if they're in-house or external. I've noticed it on people I have as consultants that I'm like, are they okay? Should I go ask another one of their coworkers? Because they're just, when people are just so negative, it's like, well, what's going on? But the people that are so positive, even when big challenges or issues happen, those that are positive and are like, all right, how are we going to fix that?
That's
Like,
it.
here's what we learned and let's go about it. But the people that are like wanting to go at it so negatively, like, I don't even want to work with them as much as the people who are like, okay, stuff happens. People make mistakes.
What's the
We're humans.
solution?
What's the solution? Who do we need to call to help us figure it out? What did we learn from it so we don't make that mistake again? And just taking those as positive opportunities helps propel people and keep people in the profession. Whereas the ones that spin in negativity either leave in not a specialist way like you did, but are more the negative, I hate architects and leave. It can be detrimental to anybody's career. So I think mindset's huge.
It is. It is. And it's a piece. We spend so much energy and time in this part of our lives, and I know we all know that, but it bleeds over, right? So
affects life at home, affects
yes,
driving
for sure.
home, what
It
road
affects
rage you
all of
have.
it. So I think that just generally speaking, no matter where you are in your career, and it's impossible to do that all the time, of
Yeah.
course, we're human. But if you are able to pause and just kind of reset and think like, all right, where is this coming from? And how can I change the trajectory of this energy? It is going to help things fall into place better. And that's where the
Yeah.
cool connections are made. So if, for instance, you know that the position you're in right now isn't quite the right fit, but you're not sure where the right fit is, chances are if you are coming at things with that type of that positive mindset, chances are you're going to make more connections with people out there in the world. You're going to network deeper in with people in the world. And so it's going to be easier for you to find, the next stop in your career that could be the forever long-term stop.
Yeah. And the more networks the more you get used to talking to people and can ask the questions. Then you can start to learn more and see if there's a pivot or something else that you should look into that you didn't even know existed. So,
And let's face it, I mean, I don't know about you, but in hindsight, some of the hardest experiences that I had as a very young professional, I am now at this stage in my career so thankful for. I am just so thankful that I had those experiences, that time, to learn that part of it. Because it really does, it gives you good perspective. It makes you um, a little more resilient as a professional. And yeah, those parts of the journey are also well worth it.
yeah,
Just don't want to stay there. Don't stay there too long.
Yeah.
But
I will say my biggest challenges in my career have really defined who I am today. If anyone really enjoyed our conversation today and wanted to get a hold of you, is there a good way to get a hold of you?
yeah, email is probably the easiest way. I'm sure you can link that in the show notes. It's Pakler, Pakler. There's no C in there, at LaFace-McGovern.com. That's the easiest way for sure. And yeah, anybody who needs anything, let me know.
Yep, I'll leave your email below. So if anybody wants to learn more about lighting design, even if you're not locally here in Pittsburgh, you can always reach out to Tara. So thank you so much, Tara, for taking the time to speak with me tonight. I know I had so much fun talking to you.
Thanks for having me. This is fun. This was my first podcast experience.
So the first of many. We'll have to have you on again. Maybe we'll do something live and we'll play with lights somewhere. It'll be fun.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
So,
okay.
All right.
To be continued.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Check out the description below for any resources, links, and contact information we discussed. Did you like the conversation today? Is there something you'd like to know more about or a topic I should cover? Leave me a comment below and I will see what I can do to best answer your questions. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel. It does really help others be able to find this resource to have larger conversations. So leave me a comment and subscribe. I really appreciate your support.